Hello. Excellent. Fantastic. Well, welcome to BSO's first Q&A. Sorry, Q&A the BSO way. The other day when I was actually sending out, obviously, an invitation to everybody. What was actually doing? So bear with me. So what was actually happening was we had to think very, very quickly of a name to try and explain the Q&A sessions, what we're going to try and do on a weekly basis. Just for a little bit of housekeeping, what I've done, I've actually muted everybody. If you want to speak, obviously raise your hands. There is no agenda to today. When we had the very, very first one, just quickly show your hands, those who were on our very, very first webinar. I know Lee was on there, John, Michelle, and Jane. What we found is the discussion part we had after the presentation was really, really good. It's obviously helped with the business community. Some ideas were passed, and I think in the ever-changing times, Gary, are you still playing with that Rubik's Cube thing, are you? Gary's keeps distracting me with his Rubik's snake. So what we found is that that Q&A part was very, very good, and because let's face it, we're going to have constant questions. Time's going to change faster than we can adapt ourselves. So we're just trying to get that sense of the community going. And for those who can't obviously join these sessions, we're going to record everyone, post them onto the Facebook channels, obviously post them via YouTube. So I've just written down a couple of topics to start people off. I'll use those if we need to. If you want to start with a question or to jump in on it, you'll find on your screen a button to raise your hand. If you can use that to obviously start with any kind of question you want. So John's just press that. From my side, I actually get to see where the hands are, which is a lot easier than to put it up there. So Gary's put his hand up, and so has John Koss. So John, if you'd like to start, if you want to unmute yourself and raise your question.
Yeah, so on the back of the announcement yesterday,
yep.
That they announced by the self-employed,
yep.
After doing a bit more digging, this apparently also goes back to director-only businesses like mine, where they will pay 80% of whatever you're paying yourself via PAYE.
Yep.
Now, if you're doing it how your accountants tell you to do it and pay yourself the basic before
yep.
tax and then rely on the dividends, that probably results in the government only paying us around £580 to £600 a month, which is next to nothing. What are you guys doing to battle against that? Or if anyone's got any views on top of that, what I'm doing is I'm going to spend the weekend looking at potential personal loans just to get me through this period. What are your suggestions, or what do you think around that?
Okay, would anyone like to jump in on this one? Okay, we'll go to Michelle first. If you want to unmute yourself, Michelle.
Yeah. So my perspective, just from the HR side of things, which is my expertise, I don't think a company director can furlough themselves because you have to remain a company director. So I don't think you'll even be able to get the 80% of your basic wage.
Just for some conversations I had online yesterday with some accountants, they're thinking for the director-only businesses, they won't have to furlough themselves. They're going to be treated exactly the same as a sole trader, where it's basically your profit is they're treating profit as what your earning is.
Yeah, I think the government yesterday confirmed that the people that pay themselves through dividends aren't included in the scheme yesterday.
Yeah, so
and also you can't furlough yourself as a company director if you're the only employee.
That's right. Gary, if you want to mute yourself, mate.
Yeah. Can I just say something generally? This is a crisis we're in.
Yep.
The country has limited funds, right? Now, some self-employed people, some people who put themselves as company directors, had it very good for a long time. There are people in real need. Now, we can't have it always. Sometimes it's good for us just to declare a small dividend and use the money how we want later on. I'm just saying this, I'm not going to be popular for it. I don't look for being popular. I don't have to be popular. But you cannot have it always. And what we're looking for is the people most in need getting the help that they need
Yep.
Now, I know it's a socialist way of looking at things. We are supposed to be a socialist country. So can people please try and think about the bigger picture and not just what's happening to themselves?
Cool.
That's it.
Yeah. So, okay. So just going back to, obviously appreciate the comments there. Gary, no problem at all with any of that, and agree with a lot of it. But obviously, as business owners, we're all sitting here now, and people are looking for solutions to survive the next month, 3 months, 6 months, etc. And I think that's where John come about, and obviously with Michelle as well there. Obviously, we're trying to find what kind of solutions people have got. Gareth, you've raised your hand there. Gareth, if you can unmute yourself, mate.
Yeah, all I was going to say is, presumably, whether single owner managed one-man director companies or not, companies that are struggling are able to apply for the COVID loans. So, John, just in your situation, rather than looking for personal loans, would it not make more sense to be able to potentially apply for the COVID loan? Now, actually, it may be of little consequence either way, and it may be that the criteria aren't right. But obviously, there is support for, the idea of the self-employed support is to give in the self-employed sphere what there is currently in the corporate sphere. So it may be that if you've got a limited company, that you can use that. Now, obviously, lending criteria, etc. aside, but I'm happy to give whatever support I can, because as an insolvency practitioner, there are people sending me information on a daily, hourly basis as more and more of this unfolds, which I'm quite happy to share with anyone. If Brett, if you want to share contact details at the end of this for everyone, then I'll give whatever input I can, because I've seen what happens if people get into debt that they can't repay, and it's not funny. But there is support, and there is also, obviously, if you're looking at, can I pay my mortgage? And the answer is no. Well, the answer to that may well be a mortgage holiday. And I would suggest that individuals seek options such as that, because, it's never a great idea, for just putting it into a different context. If you have suppliers that are chasing you for payments in a different context that you don't generally pay interest to, why would you borrow money that you're paying interest on to pay them, when you could have a sensible conversation with them about, actually, I can't afford it at the moment. Can we set up a payment plan? Can I defer it? And have a sensible conversation with someone that isn't charging you interest before you jump into bed with, you can't jump into bed with Wonga, obviously, because they've gone, because it turns out lending money irresponsibly isn't a very good business model. But you know what I mean, why pay? Don't get yourself into a pickle is what I'm sort of trying to say. Yeah,
and on the coronavirus loan, you need 12 to 24 months of business accounts to prove cash flow and profit. I've been trading for 10 months and I don't have that. So I can't go for that coronavirus business loan.
Just in terms of the business loans, Gary, I'll come to yourself in a second, John Ramo, because I know you've gone through a process because it's something online. Just for people's benefit, I spoke to a member yesterday who applied for one of the business loans. His credit rating is squeaky clean. He's got no problems. The business has been successful. It basically deals with embroidery and workwear. So obviously things just dropped off a complete cliff for him. The majority of what he does is for events and for hospitality. No problems at all. He's been declined the business loan because he has never borrowed money before. So his credit file doesn't say he's borrowed money. It's absolutely crazy. So in terms of that, it's a case of the actual business loans we've seen so far, and I've also spoken to BCRS, that the amount of detail they want to go into with businesses, for the majority of the small business owners, people like us, it's just not going to apply. It's just not going to apply. It's going to be so onerous, it's ridiculous. John, I'll come to you in a second. Actually, I'll come to you now, John. Sorry, John Ramwell.
Well, all I was going to say is, I hear what you're saying about getting a loan, or particularly getting the coronavirus loans where there's no interest or low interest. The problem is that a loan only solves a cash flow issue. It doesn't replace the lost income. And the lost income is going to have a knock-on effect, because there's going to be business that you lose during this period that you never get back. So even when we do go back to normality, everyone's profit and turnover will be down anyway. I don't have an issue with cash flow at all. Oh yeah, I've got some savings, but I'd rather not dip into them. Not a huge amount, but I was saving for a holiday, so I can keep myself going for a few months. But the issue is that through legislation, which I totally understand has to have been brought in to safeguard the country and our people, we are now forced into a situation where we can no longer earn a living, and we're in such a tricky situation. Totally get what Gary's saying there, where we have to look at the people that are most in need, and I'm not looking to the government to replace my entire income, but just to give me enough to what would be deemed as sufficient to pay my bills. Now, we know from anyone who's had any dealings with the DWP that their notion of what someone can survive on is ludicrous. I've been a single parent with no job at one point, and the DWP reckoned that I could rent a one-bedroom flat for £200 a month.
Yeah.
And that was all they were prepared to give me in housing benefit. So what really needs to be addressed is a fair system that doesn't cripple the country financially. I mean, we are going to be crippled anyway, but which doesn't put even financial duress on the system, because this is going to take 20 plus years to recover from.
Yep. We'll come to, obviously, probably tips for survival and diversification in a second, John. I'm just going to go to David Dwyer and then I'm going to go to John Burdekin. David Dwyer?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Gareth was saying, because it is worth asking the question. We have lots of people work for us on self-employed basis. However, we have 4 or 5 individuals that work for us on a very regular basis. What we've said we'll do with those individuals is actually defer their invoicing and things like that. So they're going to carry on invoicing us, but they're going to invoice us under COVID loan. And we will then pay them up until June, when they can then get their government money back in, or get at least 80% of their government money, which, fingers crossed, they will then pay us or repay us that loan at no interest. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you are struggling for cash flow and the banks are not cooperating, then it really is worth speaking to the people that you normally work with, if you have regular customers, and see if they will be prepared to help you out, if they've got a cash flow that they could help you out with.
Yeah, absolutely. We've already had a couple of members who've turned around to us saying, look, Brett, we need to keep you going. We know that your cash flow is going to be affected because of the very nature of what we do, but we need to keep you going because you're supporting lots of other people. Our invoice is due in end of April. Can I pay it now?
Yeah, I mean,
we've had 2 people like that who've actually done that for us, which has been brilliant. Yeah. One we've taken up on, one we haven't taken up on yet. And it's so important to obviously try and support as many people as you possibly can, obviously, through this, especially if other people are dealing with other people. I agree with 100% with you, Dave.
Yeah, one of the things, do bear in mind, there is a risk attached to that at the end of the day, they might say, well, thanks, but, I'm keeping the money that you've paid me and my 80%. There is always a risk. So I would suggest you only do that with people that you know very well. They've been regular customers for a good time, and
absolutely,
and just be careful what you do. But if you can help people out, then that's what this is all about, isn't it?
Absolutely. John Burdekin?
Yeah, I had a question around universal credits and their specific application to sole traders, director-only businesses. I wonder whether anybody can tell us a little more about universal credits in our world. I do appreciate there will be people with a greater need for that universal credit than us, but can anybody shed any light on the application of universal credit in our world?
Okay, John Kosh, you just put your hand up there. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, so when I launched a business, and I'm not afraid to put my hand up and say I applied for universal credit just to keep some cash flowing into the personal account. The application process is you apply online, and then you have to basically state everything, why you're applying for it, what your income is. If you have more than £6,000 in the bank or in savings, then you stand absolutely no chance of getting universal credit. Universal credit, you'll get, when I applied for it, the maximum you can get is £251 a month. And if you require housing benefit on top of that, they'll contribute up to £253 a month towards housing benefit. You then have to be interviewed, and you have to provide a monthly income statement to universal credit. And once you go over the limit, they then ask you to sign off. I had to sign off universal credit in January when I took a first bulk payment out of the company, and they said you can't be on it anymore. So I had to sign off. Hopefully that answers your question there.
That's really useful. Thank you.
Lee Baker, you put your hand up there. I don't know if that's regarding that.
Yeah, well, correct me, anybody, if I'm wrong, but I looked into this, and from my understanding, if you have a partner who is earning in any way, zero, nothing.
Yeah. Would it be worthwhile me trying to get a little bit of clarification on universal credit on behalf of members in case that's required? Yeah. Okay. Well, what we'll do, we'll ask around the members to see what information we can get in terms of that. Just in terms of other businesses as well. Sorry, John Ramel?
Just a quick one. Before they made the announcement with regard to self-employed workers, or when they made the previous announcement, I should say, with regard to claiming universal credit, I went online to try and make an application. And when I got to the stage of verifying my ID online electronically, which I'd done previously, so my record, my ID should be already stored, it said that I had to do it again. And I found out something like 65,000th in the queue. And it would have taken 16 days to reach the front of the queue. And you can ask it to email you when you get to the front of the queue, and that once you've set it in motion, you've only got 45 minutes anyway to fill it out. So at the moment, even if universal credit is the right route for you, you haven't got a hope in hell of going down the route anyway. My concern now is that because they've said if you're claiming universal credit, you won't get the revised offer that's come through for self-employed. And now I'm thinking, well, now that I've started the ball rolling and they're waiting for me to verify my identification, will they say, well, you can't have that, and then I'll lose out on both.
Right. Okay.
So
what we'll
go
do
on and try and cancel my application, I think.
Okay. What we'll do, we'll try and get some clarification, because let's face it, it's an ever-evolving situation. I don't think you can ever, I think Gary's obviously mentioned this earlier, nobody could ever actually predicted this would have happened so quickly. Let's face it, we're 2 weeks into this so far, and the whole world has changed how we're working. Just a conversation I had with a member yesterday, for those who have got businesses and pay business rates, or those who have got business rate relief. Speaking to a gentleman who owns a car parts distributors, he pays only a small amount of business rates, asking us what have we heard. So obviously reiterated it. Just told to ring the council. He rang the council, and the council told him, just stop your direct debit. Just stop the direct debit. The money's better in your account than in ours, because we're still waiting for government guidelines. And if the money's in your account and you owe us, we will chase you for it in due course. But if we've got it and you've got to try and claim it back off us, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. So just stop your direct debits, and the grants, etc., will be coming through as soon as they know about them. Daryl, you've just raised your hand there. Sorry, Daryl.
Yeah. Hi everyone. It was just on the small business rates relief as well, Brett. So I was on a Zoom call this morning. I'm not sure if anybody else was on the kind of the best of Walsall call. We had a couple of guys from the council there, and it's just a quick tip for everybody. They're slowly making their way through kind of writing out to everybody and contacting everybody about the grants associated with small business rates relief. It's a manual process for them, so it's taking time. So if you see another business get it and you haven't had anything, don't worry, because it doesn't mean that they've all been sent out as an automated batch. The other thing is make sure your contact details are correct, because they're doing a combination of email, text, and written communications. So if it's going to an office address and you're not picking up the post, you might miss it. So just make sure the council have your correct contact details. Just thought I'd let everybody know that, because I think the council were suffering from a large number of businesses that they couldn't get in touch with.
Yeah, absolutely. And David, you just obviously messages are obviously quite pertinent there. But obviously all this support they're actually giving, we're all going to be paying a lot more tax in the future. David, over to you.
Yeah, just unmuting myself there. So yeah, that comment was just to alleviate anybody's thoughts or misgivings on actually accepting these loans or applying for them. It's not a handout that people are applying for at all. As the Chancellor was saying yesterday, the rates of tax for self-employed people, we have benefited in the past. That's going to change massively. We will be taxed pretty highly in the future. So it's not really a handout. They are going to get their money back and then some on top. You know, once our tax rates go up, I feel that they're like the price of petrol. It goes up. It doesn't very often go down.
Yeah.
So
John
I think
Ramel,
that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm great.
Very quickly, just on a point of clarification with regard to the business grants. Obviously, you have to apply to your local authority for these. My business is actually registered in Devon because that's where my accountant is. So would I need to apply there or here?
No, we're talking about business rates specifically. So,
right, the business rates, yeah.
So that
doesn't apply to me. My wife has rents two shops, and I'm told that she can't get any rate relief on them because if she had one large one, she'd be able to get it, and if she had one large one and one small one, she could get it. But if she has two small shops, because the funny way that they've worked it out, she can't get any relief. It's graceful.
How long ago did she speak to them?
Yesterday.
Right. Okay. Have a word with your accountant, or have a word with her accountant to see what to do. I mean,
I've worked with my accountant. Her accountant's shocking.
Oh, right. Okay. Might want to suggest you might move accountants. Gareth?
I've been saying that for years.
Gareth, just going to jump to you on this one as an insolvency practitioner. Hopefully you heard, obviously, what John was saying there about his wife. Yeah. Is got obviously two premises. The council saying, no, you don't get rate relief because you got two shops. Surely it's still probably going to be good for them just to stop paying the business rates and say, look, we haven't got proper clarification on this.
Well, yeah, like you say, it's the same as your direct debit, isn't it? You know, wait for the council to chase you because let's face it, being pragmatic and honest about it, they ain't going to be at full capacity for debt chasing. So whilst I would never encourage people to irresponsibly rack up debt that they aren't able to afford, if it's a case of does the council get paid or do your employees get paid, your employees are preferential creditors. So you couldn't be criticised for it. Now, quite apart from that, there are currently rumblings in the insolvency legislation that stuff that would ordinarily come to the fore, like wrongful trading, if matters are made worse, may well be suspended. Again, I'm not suggesting that people take on debt that they can't repay, because it doesn't do anyone any favours and could get you into a spot of bother. But if it's a case of being able to keep the business going but cancel a direct debit for business rates, for example, with a view to then contacting the council at a later date to say, one, I thought I could do this because I was going to benefit from relief, notwithstanding the fact that my accountant told me I couldn't because my accountant's a tit. And then even if you do rack up some sort of deficit in the future, come into a payment plan over a period of time that's affordable to you in respect of that debt when they come and chase you for it. You know, at the end of the day, technically, a director of an insolvent company has a duty to make sure that everyone is treated equally. But equally, they've got a duty to all stakeholders, and that includes employees and themselves, to make sure that everyone is treated fairly and that they're taking every possible step to minimise the overall loss to creditors. So technically, if you can't afford to pay everyone, you should cancel your direct debit anyway, because it would be unfair for you to pay the council in full and not pay your milk bill.
Great point, Gareth. Just going to go to the last point on this one, and we'll move on to something a little bit more positive, hopefully. Go to David. You had your hand raised there again, David.
I did indeed. So in terms of business rates, yeah, it's quite right. If they consider that you operate a business from more than one premises, then you will not get any small business rate relief whatsoever. We actually operated, Brett, you've been to our place.
Yeah.
We operated from there. And when we first moved in, there are two businesses in there. There's an electrical training centre and a gas training centre. The council argued that because they both used the same front door, they shared the reception area, but then each of the individual rooms that the business was split into, we ended up getting separate business rates bills for. So we had 17 business rate bills at one stage.
That's nice.
And this is because they could then say, no, you operate from more than one premises. All of those premises that we operated from were within the same building. So the solution, John, I think in your wife's case would possibly be to consider closing one of the businesses, to have another business reopen in that case with maybe somebody that she could trust, or a family friend or something, opening that business.
Yeah. Well, this is, I mean, the long-term plan is to close one of them anyway, but it's not something that can be done overnight, unfortunately. But there we go. Thank you.
So we'll move off the general government support now, if that's okay. Otherwise, I'm sure we can continue discussing this for hours and hours and hours. I've got a couple of other notes here for things to look at. Does anybody else want to just raise a question there? Gareth, you've raised your hand straight away. Can't hear you, Gareth.
I was just going to say, when you say it's something that can't be done overnight, why not? You know, it might be the time to do that, and it might be the time to take some advice as to what the best procedure for doing it is. Because if you are looking to shut one shop in the long term, why do it in the long term? Because things can be done very quickly.
If it's okay, mate, what I'll do, I'll put you two in contact shortly and just obviously continue the conversation after, if that's okay with yourselves.
Yeah, I'm not saying you need to do a sledgehammer to crack a nuts, drive a bus through it insolvency process, but, you know, now might be the time to look into doing things more quickly. And like I say, you know, there are probably ways and means that you don't necessarily know about that you come across in your day-to-day, which other people might.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to move on to Daryl. Daryl, you've raised your hand there.
Yeah, just another question for the group, really, Brett. Because one of the things that's been reported this morning is that whilst it feels like the right thing to do is to kind of focus on marketing, keeping yourself out there over the next 3 or 4 months, Facebook advertising spend has reduced. And I actually think this gives us a massive opportunity for those of us who either already spend Facebook advertising or to do a little bit more. You can get a wider reach now because there's less going on. And I just wondered if anybody else was kind of thinking about, you know, what they're going to be doing on social media over the next 3 or 4 months. So maybe we can kind of share a few ideas about that.
Okay, let's throw this open to the group. Obviously, press the button for obviously raise your hand if you can. Have you got any comments on this? Okay. Well, while people are thinking about this, I'm going to jump into this one then, Daryl. Regards to Facebook advertising, while I think it's a good idea, the great point from Gareth there, he's still not going to join bloody Facebook. That's what Gareth he's still not going to do it. And Gareth, if I didn't have to be on there, I'd be with you all day, every day, mate. Trust me. Unfortunately, Katie though does all of her communication through Facebook. So Katie's like will be scuppered without it. Unfortunately, fucking Kate, you must post about 150 times a day. I don't know if I think she's gonna hear us.
Sorry, I forgot I was muted.
All right, okay, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I've got all my clients on my Facebook, which in a way as well, because I've had to prove to something that I'm not having income for the next few months with all the wedding bookings cancelling.
Yeah,
it's quite embarrassing, really, that it's quite non-formal communication.
Right.
So I am going to swap to emailing people. So obviously I've only got screenshots of Facebook messages to prove that I'm losing income.
Right. Gary, was you putting your hand up there, or was you just showing the Rubik's Cube again?
No, I coughed. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no, sorry. Okay. Get David Dwyer.
Yeah, just unmuted myself there. So in regards to Facebook, Katie, with all respect to yourself, I think it probably works fantastically for your business. We actually employed somebody specifically to do that and to do social media marketing, and we found it had zero impact on the business, which is surprising considering we run training centres. I would have thought that would have been ideal. I would think very carefully about the marketing that all of you are planning to do, and make sure that your marketing spend, you get good value for money. Yeah. And that's the one thing I would say is, yes, people are going to be dropping the prices all over the place, but that doesn't mean that you should go out and spend extra money just because it's in a sale. Yeah,
just coming to you now, John. You put your hand up there.
Yeah, David, that's interesting what you say. I would say that it's, the thing with social media is we tend to look at all social media platforms as being the same, but actually different platforms are right for different types of business. And I would say if your business is training, my instinctive reaction would be then Facebook isn't the place you need to be. I would say for training your business to business, I would say you need to concentrate on LinkedIn. That's the place for you to concentrate your social media marketing campaigns. And the other thing, just going back to, yes, Daryl, totally agree with what you say. In a market where everyone's pulling their marketing budget, it's an opportunity to steal a march on your competitors because you're on a much smaller playing field. But as I say, choose your mediums or your platforms carefully and make sure that they're the right ones for your business.
I'm going to just jump in here because I know that me and Daryl had a bit of a conversation about this yesterday. And I know I had the conversation with Lee as well. That my advice to anybody, and I can't say whether I'm right or wrong, but if it was me and the avenues that we're going down, we're going to be focused on the things that we can control. So it's a case of marketing at the moment, I think, and sales at the moment, with regards of every one of our industries, it's all changed. And effectively, people are going to hold on to cash because people are worried about, obviously, their own cash flow. But also, we're still problem solvers. Problems will still occur. And I use the example with Lee at the moment. It's a great example, but a great post on Facebook about a nuclear bomb, obviously mushroom cloud. And I think the comment was, what would happen if your internet went down now? Which pretty much we're on the lifeboat. The internet is our lifeboat at the moment. If our computer broke tomorrow, our internet went down tomorrow, forget it. It's do not pass go. Do not collect £200. We're out of business. End of. There's no way you're going to be able to trade without the internet at this moment in time. So people will still spend to get computers fixed to make sure things are still working properly. It's all about focusing on the need and developing that need and making sure you focus on people's problems. And I'd do that in the most personal way you can do it. And that's what I would do. Personally, we're going to be working heavily on referral-based strategies and direct introductions is what we're going to be doing. And on a social point of view, we won't be using Facebook apart from just general communication, but we will be using LinkedIn because it's a process I can control. If that makes sense, Darryl.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just
jump in?
Briefly? I think customers, whether they're existing or potential customers, like you say, are going to be holding very tightly to the reins at the moment. We all have for all of us, there is one thing that we wish our customers would get round to, and they don't. And we all do it in our own business. We all have aspects of our own business that we think, when I've got time, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I would suggest that maybe think about that and think, okay, well, is this the point at which we do make an offer on this? So, for example, although it's not our core product, one of the things we do is we build basic websites for people. Now they can go and get a website from any Tom, Dick or Harry these days. But for a small business where they've spent the last God knows how many years or months running around trying to chase new business, and now they find themselves sitting at home with nothing to do, you could get onto them and say, okay, look, why not use this opportunity to look at some of the infrastructure of your business and get it right, so that when you are in a position to move forward full steam ahead again, you can be ready to hit the ground running. And that's something we're doing, is approaching people saying, look, if you just want a straightforward website, half a dozen pages, or you need a new branding or whatever, then that's something we can offer at a discount at the moment, because we haven't got any business.
Good point.
So, and I think for everyone, there'll be a product or a service that you can offer at a time like this, that your customers will go, yeah, you know what, this might be a good time to do this.
Yeah, I think that brings on to one of the points I've got down here, is, have people already started diversifying? Let's just ask this to the group who are on there. Have you started looking at what you offer, how you deliver, and moving that way? Mark, you've put your hand up there. Can't hear you, Mark.
Sorry. Daryl, last week you put out a request to people saying, an offer to people saying that for the first 3 months, £99, you can set up an online shop. How did that go? Did you have any interest?
Yeah, so what I've had is probably about 6 companies interested so far, Mark. Which is good, and in fact, there's probably about 2 or 3 of those probably going to be going ahead with it. What I've actually found, and I'm still trying to get my head around this, is some companies are either they've switched their model and they're now that busy that they can't see the wood for the trees, or the companies are still, because I was just getting up the kind of the classic change curve. They're too early in the change curve to be at the solution mode at the moment. So I don't know whether people are aware of the change curve, but you can kind of Google it and you can see the relative emotions and phases that people and businesses will go through. But a lot are still in that kind of denial and anger stage. And I'll be honest, I can see that reflective on a lot of the Zoom calls. I think a lot of people are in a position where they're really fed up with the a lot of us are in that kind of 5% that the government aren't helping. I think when businesses get through that and realise, well, we just on our own and we've got to sort it out for ourselves, and they're in the kind of the exploring and the acceptance mode, I expect probably to see a step change in the uptake then. And I'd imagine that's going to be over the next kind of 1 to 2 weeks.
Is that what you're talking about there, Daryl? When we were chatting privacy, obviously offline yesterday, about what I classify as the hysteria stage. People are just, oh my God, things are on fire at the moment still. Once they get over that, then they're going to say, well, we're still here, we're still in business, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, I mean, the change curve is a great model, and anybody that doesn't know about it, as I say, just Google it, because it does help you kind of get your head around how different businesses will be reacting, and also how you as an individual are reacting at the moment. It's always interesting to plot where you are on the change curve. I mean, I find, because I'm aware of the change curve, I try and accelerate my own process through the denial and anger stage. Mark, see, I've seen Mark do this very effectively as well. He gets through his anger stage very quickly when I throw changes at Mark. And the sooner you can get into that kind of acceptance and exploring phase, the better it will be for you mentally, personally, and for your business.
Yeah.
And so in terms of the customers, the businesses that I'm trying to help at the moment, if I can see they're in that kind of almost denial or anger stage, I just try and help them kind of get to the exploring stage as quickly as possible, just by throwing a few ideas at them, giving them some demos and saying, this can help you.
So just quickly throw open to people. Oh, sorry, David, you've got your hand up there, sorry.
Yeah, we're talking about diversification of the business, and something that I've now looked at with the other people involved in our business is actually going and doing online courses and things like that, which is something that we'd resisted because, like all dinosaurs, I'm very resistant to change. We've discussed it several times before, but now this has actually happened. It's kind of brought a whole new dimension to our existing business, because we'll be doing online courses as soon as possible. And I would expect them to continue well after this event has sorted itself out.
I think that's a great point, David. Obviously, I mean, the BSO, those of you who know me for a long while, I'm trying to think who's known me for the longest here. You're probably talking Lee has known me for quite a long while from the start of, certainly when I was with Business First Network. John, I think we actually knew each other from my old FSP days, even though we didn't engage too much. But those who know me, I never would have ran an online meeting like this. And to be honest, I'm actually quite getting used to it now. It's not too bad.
Yeah, this is one of the things that Daryl was talking about in the last webinar that we did. And it was the first Zoom conference I'd ever been involved in. But what it showed me, and what this conference is showing me, is it's quite possible for me to not just do an online course which has got PowerPoint content, but to actually run it as a virtual classroom. So we'll be doing online courses and we'll be doing virtual courses. And that's a whole new income stream to our business, even beyond this epidemic. So
let's just throw this open to everybody, and let's see if we can get an answer off everybody. There's 12 of us on the screen at the moment. Kate's had to shoot off, and so has John. Just go through everybody and just give examples of how we've actually already diversified, either service offering, how we deliver things, or even products. What we'll do, Mark, we'll start with yourself because you're my top right, and we'll work across. Mark Nash.
Hi. So I'm a bespoke software developer. Now things haven't really changed a lot for me. So I haven't had to change much other than move my desk home, where I'm actually still need to remotely connect into the office because we've got our servers there. But it's all pretty fine at the moment. But I'm just here really to listen to how everybody else is doing today.
That's fine. We go to John Ramwell. You've already mentioned about, obviously, simple website.
Well, so we actually started to diversify towards the end of last year, because up till then, my background is in pay-per-click marketing. Been doing that since for 18 years or so, before Google even came into the playing field, back in the days of e-spotting and Overture. And been in that marketplace for a long time, and hit the sweet spot very much when I started the business 18 years ago, because there were so few people doing what we did. But over the years, we've had to diversify gradually anyway, because every major advertising agency now has a digital team, and it was impossible to pick up the big blue chip clients that I used to. So whereas I used to do campaigns for Gap Clothing, Reebok, Umbro, Phone Warehouse, now it's 1 and 2 man bands, maybe small to medium enterprises. So towards the end of last year, we started offering a more diverse range of products which are all related. So we still do the paid advertising, but we also do social media, we do branding, and we do websites. So it's an all-encompassing digital service.
So let's just go, instead of just going through everybody, because I'm conscious that actually this will probably take about 25 minutes just to go through everybody. Just put your hand up if you want to give an example of where you've diversified at the moment, which may give others, because some things are easy, or some companies are easier to do than others. So we go to Michelle first.
So I'm obviously a consultancy business, so I'm actually looking at doing package deals for people now. So a good time when companies are closed and HR departments are really busy is I can offer to review contracts, handbooks, policies and procedures, which on the back of this crisis, a lot of contracts didn't support being able to furlough and lay off employees. The other thing I'd just say is as well is there's an income versus a revenue. So I'm looking the longer term with my business and kind of seeking a paid employment on a temporary basis with employers to give myself an income. And then actually my small businesses, I'm trying to offer as much as I can my services for free at the minute to because they can't afford to really pay me when they're laying staff off. So we're actually offering them free advice and guidance with the long-term relationship in mind. And I've actually picked up some new clients at the moment where they've asked for my advice as well. I've had a couple of bunches of flowers off people to say thank you, and they've actually said to me that when they're in a better position, they're actually going to sign me up as their HR consultant. So kind of looking at, whereas ordinarily I wouldn't have given my time away for free, and actually it's a time when I can't really afford to do that. I'm actually looking at the longer term piece.
Got you. Great example. Lee, is that your hand up or are you just resting your arm?
Yeah, just from what Michelle said, I mean, this is such a difficult one because with me, I mean, I don't know whether John's finding the same. I mean, the only contact I'm having with anybody at the moment is everybody and their dog is just after free advice. Mm-hmm. Now, how far do you limit your goodwill and, you know, damn fine chapness when, you know, you think, yeah, long term, make out that you're super helpful and you'll help them in any way you possibly can for nothing, and they'll reward you, you know, 6 months down the road. Well, I won't be here 6 months down the road, you know, so chicken and egg, isn't it?
So we'll really quickly, because I'm conscious of time, I don't want to go too far over an hour in terms of the session, unless we really need to. So quickly to John Ramwell, in terms of that, Gary Rapson's put his hand up, and I'll put a quick point on, but I think you know what I'm going to say, Lee. So John Ramwell?
I didn't know I had my hand up, but I just say, Lee, to be honest, mate, I think at the moment, my feeling is just show goodwill wherever possible. You know, if I'm not getting paid for it, well, so be it. I think what goes around comes around, and if it doesn't, well, at least you can feel good about yourself, mate.
Yep, cool. Gary Rapson, you just put your hand up there. We'll go to John Burdekin as well in a second. Gary, can't hear you, mate. Do you want to unmute yourself, mate?
Lee, I think if it's general advice that you're giving people, do that for free. But if it's actually technical stuff, like, say, for example, you'd need to log on to people's laptops to sort out software issues and things, yes, I think they should pay for that, and it is an essential service.
Yeah. John Burton,
you need to sort of find a way that you can structure it and have the conversation with people saying you need to keep going. If you're going to be claiming that 80%, then bear that in mind and give 80% of your advice for free. If you're not going to be claiming the 80%, or you know, then carry on expecting full payment. Because if we are going to get help, we should also give help. That's
cool. John Burton, was yours going to be a different point, an example of what you're doing, or just in regards to Lee's?
It would really, I mean, certainly to echo all the goodwill points, but particularly to echo Michelle's point as a consultant, it's for I guess for us, it's tailoring what we do now. Diversifying, yes, but actually specifically targeting what we do to address somebody's immediate need right now, which is, in my world, take cost out. What can I do right now? It might not be my normal message, but my message has to change to help someone now. So I would echo what Michelle's saying and offer those.
Absolutely. Going back to Lee's, I mean, me and Lee had a good conversation about this the other day. What I'd be doing is, yes, be giving the advice for free, because that's what you've done. And Lee's just a generally nice guy. I know everybody who's obviously logged into today, are genuinely nice people, and they will help out. But also use those conversations to try and figure out upsells and cross-sells. Because if there's a potential need there and they haven't quite got that, you can use that to actually bring, as part of a sales process, to bring an opportunity as well. Especially if you can provide a very low-cost method. So the example I gave with Lee is that if people are constantly having these issues, or a solution will create more issues further down the line, can Lee perhaps sell a very low-cost retainer base of £20 a month type thing, just to try and provide that support until they're actually ready for something but further down the line, because they're going to need it, especially things like IT. It's going back to the earlier point that with IT, if your computer breaks tomorrow, it's game over. While you was on the boat in the first place, while you was on the ship and they started to sink, you've got a choice of lifeboats. You can rip a door off and use that, like, what's it called? Kate Winslet did. You can put a life preserver on. But once you're on the lifeboat, all those options are gone. It is your last ditch. And I say with Lee's perspective, it's there. Perhaps in marketing as well. It's a case of there's going to be examples for all of these. But that's what I would look at, if that helps, Lee. Cool. Does anybody else want to raise any things? Darryl, you got your hand up there. Sorry, Darryl, you need to unmute yourself. You was not paying attention to your etiquette thing yesterday.
I was starting to talk before I'd hit the button, actually, but it was just on Lee's point, and maybe something that we can all have a think about, because there is a lot of kind of people looking for free advice, but it is a case of just having a little bit more structure and discipline here. So you could almost open up a 30-minute, 45-minute Zoom call per day, which is a free advice clinic, and then the rest of your time is paid time. You know, so if people need extra kind of advice after that, you could even be charging Lee, you know, half-hour kind of consultancy sessions for, you know, 15 quid, 20 quid, you know, so it's not astronomical prices, but you're taking it from that. There's a small bit of free advice and consultancy to a low-cost support model.
Just on that, I mean, John Ramboll's just typed there, absolutely cracking idea. I think that's a brilliant idea. I think John Burdekin, I think you think that's a great idea. Thumbs up if you think that's a great idea. Lee, there's a great idea for you. Excellent. John, you've put
mindful I'm on a call with John Ramwell in half an hour's time. Let's keep it brief, John.
I was just going to say, Lee, it occurs to me that with the use of Zoom, you could even run some like masterclasses, you know, setups like, I don't know, whether it be antivirus masterclass, ironically, but you know, so where people can sign in on Zoom, create some goodwill there, and then afterwards people might go, you know, actually I've got this other problem, and you know, it might generate some business. So you know, just an idea to stick out there for you.
Yep, great stuff. So we've now just hit 11 o'clock. Sorry, Michelle, you got your hand up there, sorry.
Yeah, it was just one last thing. If anyone's really struggling from an income perspective, I know a number of business owners, like restaurant owners, business directors, small businesses I've been supporting, that either can't work at the minute because the restaurant's closed, or have the business has dropped off a cliff. And what they're actually doing, rather than claiming universal credit or the 80% furlough scheme, they're actually working in the supermarkets, delivery drivers. So they've got an income for their family. It's actually paid more than universal credit. They're contributing to the national crisis. And then the times that they're not working, they're then working on the business development, but they've still got an income for the family. So it's just a thought there for people.
It's just doing what you need to survive. That's something I learned in 2008. That's how I started with the FSB. I needed to survive. I needed to bring in money quickly, and I had no aspiration of ever working for them at that point. And here we are, a number of years further on. Obviously, that I learned a lot of skills from that. Did anybody else want to raise anything there? Lee, yep.
Off topic, what you've just been talking about, just because I missed the first couple of minutes because I was making my drink. So, confirmation, you're exactly the same as me, Brett. Single director, limited company.
Yep.
Where do we lie definitively?
Definitively, don't know 100% yet. there's a number of grey areas. From information I was sent by, did we know Maria Pasinovich, accountant? She was looking at some information last night. She needs to digest a little bit further. She thinks that sole director businesses are going to be treated as the same as self-employed, and the salary that we pay us is going to be is similar as the profit on a self-employed business.
My understanding, as Michelle said,
However, please don't quote me on that, because there's that many grey areas.
That a single director can't furlough himself. So.
No, it's not about furloughing yourself. It's a case of, because it's just a different way of being registered at a company's house. It's obviously, basically, bye David, we're still self-employed. We just have a different company structure. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And from what Maria picked up on is that they're treating that as self-employment, but what you pay yourself PAYE is what they'll potentially pay the 80% on without furloughing. Michelle, obviously, you'll probably know more on this as well, but there was something that was picked up last night off a document. We'll get more clarification. We'll put it through the Facebook groups. We'll share it by email as soon as we know. I'm more than happy to do so. John, no problem at all, mate. That's absolutely great. Great to have you on board. So has anybody else come across any more information on that other than the stuff I picked up with with Maria last night? No. Okay, we'll get more clarification as soon as we have. Just keep an eye on things like the Facebook group, where you can keep an eye on obviously emails, etc. Make sure our emails are going into your inboxes and do there. Daryl?
Yeah, it was just one final point, and I know they're not kind of a BSO member or anything like that, but I recently changed my accountant to an accountant called Grant McKnight. Okay. Joanna has been sending out a lot of really good advice, and she's now the new BBC WM accountancy expert, and she's been interviewed on BBC WM at 1:00 this afternoon. Might be worth a listening. So
can you quickly post on the Facebook group so all the members are possibly here?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm as much as I'm no fan of the FSB, I'm logging into their webinar at 2:00 to find out what they're saying, because they've got somebody they've got their chief executive on there, which I actually do know him personally, Mike Cherry, to find out what they're saying. But at the end of the day, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of how they operate, they have got substantially more reach than what I have, and substantially more money than I have as well. And obviously they were negotiating with the Chancellor in regards to all of these things. So it'd be interesting to see what their take was, if that's what they've actually negotiated. Does anybody else want to raise any other points before I close down the meeting at all? I'm conscious that Jane's not mentioned anything, and conscious, both Janes actually have not mentioned anything, to be fair. It's okay, Jane. Your name comes up as John's iPad, you see, so I'm thinking, hang on a second, that's really throwing me off. Does anybody else want to raise anything, or do they have any other concerns? I'm sure there are lots, but not at all. Okay, so just before we close the meeting, I just want to quickly just throw Gary, no problem at all, mate. That's absolutely great. Thank you very much for joining us. Does anybody want to give any feedback? This is the first time we've run one of these Q&As. I am planning to run a proper question time style event further down the line when I've got a bit more experience at this. But just quickly, is there any feedback you can give us in regards to this format of how this has worked today? Mark, did you put your hand up there?
Yeah, it was run really well. I think it was good. You gave everybody opportunities to speak, and all the members were really good at muting and talking well. So I thought it was a fantastic session. Thank you.
Cool. Daryl?
Yeah, I think again, like Mark, I thought it was a really good session. I enjoyed Gareth's Bond villain moment with the cat on his lap as well. That was pretty good. Maybe the one thing we can do differently, maybe submit questions in advance if there's an option to do that.
Possibly, yeah. Okay. No problem at all. Anybody else want to raise anything or any other feedback? Fantastic, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I will get this edited slightly and push it out onto Facebook and onto YouTube later on. Just so people know, from the webinar we had the other night where Daryl was the speaker, we didn't press record on that one, so I actually interviewed Daryl yesterday afternoon. So we're just doing a little bit of editing just to explain why we've done it in that format. First of all, it's ready to go. I just need to upload it to YouTube, and away we go. And we'll get this on there as well. And I'll also get the all the contact details for everybody who's been on this today circulated by email to all of you later on. So obviously, please feel free to connect with anybody else you want on there. And yeah, thank you very much for your time. And I'll see you all soon. Have a great day.
Thanks, Brett.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See ya.
Thanks, Brett. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.